Folks, welcome once again to Remso Republic Live. I'm sorry if we were spamming your notifications. Don't you just love the internet? You know, I went to go see Wonder Woman last week, and there's a scene in the film, no spoilers, promise you, where Steve Trevor, Chris Pine's character, looks at one of his allies who's a Native American Indian, and he's like, well, how will you signal me if I need to, get back to the bad guy? And he's just like, I will find you. You will know it's me. And I'm looking at this. It's like, okay, this is set in a World War I setting. They don't have cell phones. It's not like he's going to use carrier pigeon or anything. How did they actually manage to pull this off and get Steve Trevor to go find the rest of the team with Wonder Woman? Well, in the middle of that scene, as soon as everything's getting all crazy, World War I, doom, death, and destruction, you see giant smoke signals in the sky. And it's just kind of funny because it's so campy, it's so stereotypical. It's just how it was. But as soon as Steve Trevor sees that, he's like, oh my gosh, it's the smoke signals. And, while we're trying to get everything set up with Be Live because it's still in the beta stage, and luckily everything's been working. It's working now. Hopefully it'll work for the rest of the show. I just keep thinking, I wonder if, let's say, everything went to hell overnight, could we actually pull off smoke signals? I mean, seriously, how do? You got to set the fire up. Then you've got to make sure you've got a giant tarp that you don't set on fire as you're holding it over. And then you've got to have several people help pull it back and push it forward and pull it back. And it's just like, well, I think a lot of people would just not get their message across. Anyway, welcome in, folks. We've got some of you tuning in live right now. We'll start hitting some topics in the moment. A lot has happened the past week. I knew the one day I canceled the show because I needed to go run to a couple appointments throughout the day. Something crazy would happen. It happened last week. It happened yesterday. Actually, it also happened the week before that. Whenever there's no episode of Remso Republic Live in the morning, something terrible happens. So I don't know if that's the makings for a R.L. Stine book or something, or I'm just cursed, or it's like that movie where the guy writes a book and everything he writes actually happens. I don't know if I'm cursed, but bottom line, I'm just sensing a giant coincidence. But I do kind of want to talk about some important issues going on. We had the shooting in Alexandria where a lone crazy gunman who happens to be a socialist went and tried to take out as many Republicans during the Republican congressional baseball game practice in Alexandria yesterday. I kind of want to talk about that and some other post-primary news. Trust me, folks, it's all connected. We make everything connected so that way you understand where I'm going with this. I'm not just attaching two random stories together. But I kind of want to bring in someone to kind of help me discuss this, kind of unravel what's going on, get a different perspective than what you're going to see on the mainstream. You heard her from season 2 of the Remso Republic podcast. She's with Turning Point USA in Iowa. Ladies and gentlemen, Gina Jochimsen. Gina, what's going on?
How are you?
Tired because it's 9 a.m. and we just went through several Be Live attempts, but it's working. It's working. What's going on?
All right. Nothing really. Just trying to keep up with everything that's going on lately. It's a tragedy what happened yesterday, for sure.
What was your first reaction when you heard about it?
I mean, my heart just sunk. I can't even believe it. I mean, it's something that you don't, especially for Steve Scalise, you wake up in the morning, you don't think that something like that could ever happen to you. You don't anticipate anything like that. And then the next thing you know, you're in a hospital bed in grave condition. It's heartbreaking.
Exactly. This, I live only 25 minutes away from Alexandria. Mm-hmm. And at first, I was like a lot of people. I just hear there was a shooting of a congressman. And I instantly think D.C. And like many people, I wrongly jumped on the whole, oh, well, you see, if they allowed guns in D.C., that would be something that wouldn't occur because everyone would be armed. And then I jump on that and I find out it was in Alexandria. And it's like, oh, okay. I guess It's a bigger problem than that. And they were in D.C. and I was jumping on something that was not right. And then they jump on the whole, oh, let's learn who this guy is. And one site said, oh, he was a raging socialist. He did this because the Republicans won't pass single-payer health care or something like that. And then it's like, oh, look, all the socialists are going around shooting people. And then I see a picture of the Democrat baseball team that was also practicing that day, huddle in prayer. So instantly, it's also extremely wrong if you go ahead and paint a picture all over Democrats. And then it's like, well, all socialist revolutions start this way. They all start and end with bloodshed. And this guy who happened to be a big Bernie Sanders supporter ends up getting denounced by Bernie Sanders. So my biggest problem is this, and having to jump on this stuff, having to keep up with the news, I'm seeing a lot of people jumping to conclusions. Do you think we should just kind of wait this thing out a couple of days, or do you think now's the time to jump on it? Because my governor, Terry McAuliffe, yesterday said, because he had to politicize it immediately, 93 million people die from gun violence a day.
Yeah,
so instantly,
shocking.
I think we kind of need to, just kind of slow down. What do you think?
I mean, the evidence is already there, as to terms of what happened. I mean, he was clearly targeting GOP lawmakers, which is just, like I said, heartbreaking. But I mean, I think most of the evidence is already out now. I mean, I think we can jump to conclusions. I think one of the main points that should be emphasized is the fact that he was, alone responsible for what happened. I don't think any politicians were obviously responsible, but there is influenced rhetoric. Everything that the left has called for, political rhetoric and the violence that they have been calling for, between Kathy Griffin and the decapitation of President Trump, what she had held up or whatever, as well as, Madonna saying that she wanted to blow up the White House. I think it's those kinds of things that are being said that influence people to carry out these kind of things, and it needs to stop.
Do you think the left is going to take any type of responsibility for this? Because I'm already seeing some liberal journalists blame Sarah Palin.
Right, that New York Times
honestly, that's the most wild out there. You have to pull off some pretty insane mental gymnastics to go ahead and start going after Sarah Palin. It's like blaming Barney or something, or John Lennon, or that guy that wrote Catcher in the Rye. That is some crazy stuff. Do you think they're going to take any responsibility for it?
Oh, no. I mean, it's just another example of the fact that they dodge at anything that they can. I mean, that New York Times editorial was so far off. It's been proven time and time again, and it's just an obvious fact that Sarah Palin had nothing to do with that Gifford shooting. But, like any other time, they're not going to take any responsibility for this.
Exactly. And it's incredibly sad. But here's the problem, because everyone, especially the social media warriors, everyone just kind of wants to fight each other right now. Everyone just wants to fight. And then you have stuff like all the examples you brought up earlier of Kathy Griffin. Now we've got U.S. Senator Tim Kaine saying that we need riots in the streets and the left needs to go fight in the streets. We have the Antifa in New York yesterday stabbing a police horse to death. Berkeley riots, Evergreen race wars, looking like there's something out of the apartheid. And then we have the chairman of Vox, VOX, for those of you that don't know Vox, it's a left-wing rag, saying that ultimately, I think he was going after Senator Rand Paul on this. The goal of the left is to not only get rid of the Second Amendment, but to also overthrow the government. It's very easy for us to just say, I think it was InfoWars of all places. They went ahead and said, this is the start of the new civil war. It's very easy to say that this is the start of something bigger. And then all that does is that gives the bigots and the haters what they want. They want the right to react.
Right.
They want us to react. They expect us to react. Ultimately, this is an issue I'm having. Do I go ahead and just start attacking people 24/7? Do I start just trying to calm down? This is a situation we've seen many times in the past, but it's the moment gunshots are fired. How do you start a conversation with a leftist when you're afraid they might shoot you?
How do you ever change an ideology that thinks that the other side is inherently evil and just out to get them and, kill and do everything that they say that we were going to do as a GOP? You can't change that. But can you imagine what the other side would be like right now, or the double standard that would be had if the roles were flipped around? The calls that would say, Trump is responsible for this, all of his, calling for violence and all of these things as if, he had something to do with it. I couldn't even imagine the double standard.
There would probably be a full-on, a city would be burned down.
Right.
A city would be burned down.
Yeah, there would be riots.
There would be riots. They'd be calling. They would honestly call for every Republican to step down. It comes to this, though, and I want to be very careful. We're not talking about every Democrat out there, but ultimately, this is like Ebola for the soul. I've been saying that progressivism is the HIV of political philosophy for a little while now. And people who were calling me crazy and, vitriolic and fiery and, trying to instigate a fight a year ago are now saying, yeah, you might be kind of onto something with that. But it makes things more difficult because it's like you said, we've got to have that conversation eventually. like, from my time in student activism to now being an adult post-college, it's becoming excessively harder to try and change the mind of somebody that is inherently selfish because they think it's good to steal from other people at gunpoint.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
One of the things is one of the people that I look up to the most, he's an economist at American Enterprise Institute, Arthur Brooks. He mentioned, we have a contempt problem in America where we see our opponent or the opposing side or, anyone that you disagree with, definitely on the left, as worthless, or we see their opinions as worthless. I think that we forget all too easily that you can still respect somebody and, understand their point of view without just demeaning them and thinking that they're a derogatory person and, have the worst intentions. And I think that's, kind of where we're at now, is that we forget our humility as Americans and that we are truly all one country. But I think that's more incited on the left than anything.
How do you think Republicans should respond to this?
That's a tough question. I mean, it's like I said, it's so easy to blame the left and say, oh, well, you were doing X, Y, and Z, calling for things like this. But at the same time, we have to remember, we have to resist almost to the fact that he was a lone gunman. I mean, he still did it, whether he was mentally ill or not. I think that might have something to do with it. But either way, he was still influenced by political rhetoric. And I think that just needs to be said.
Understood. Gina, we've got to get going. What do you think is the final message you want people to hear about this? Because everyone's hearing 20 million different views.
Right.
What's your view on this? What's the one thing you really want to get out to people, both on the left and on the right?
I mean, I think the just general principle is that we need to remember our humility, that the political discourse, it's good that we disagree. It's good that we don't all believe the same things, but we have got to get off this track of, hating each other for opposing beliefs. We have to remember that we're all Americans and that humility is a huge principle in who we are.
Exactly. Gina, thank you so much for coming on the program. Sorry it couldn't be a cheerier topic, but definitely appreciate your view and everything, and definitely keep up the great work in Iowa.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Folks, I kind of want to pivot. I told you I was going to bring two random points together, and it was going to all seem cohesive. But, I've only been a Republican since November. I hate party politics. I hate compromising. I want to pick every fight possible. But just as a person, you can't die on every hill out there. Life is full of just inconveniences. And it's really, really hard not to jump on something like this and say that this is the start of something even worse. Cooler heads have to be in the lead on this, because ultimately we have a very fragile nation. That's not a snowflake pun, but ultimately these are tough times. And I'm seeing this even here in Virginia. We had the whole country looking at our primary recently. I did not vote for Ed Gillespie. I do not like Ed Gillespie. And for the most part, I'm seeing a lot of Republicans doing the same thing I saw at the Libertarian Party. They're all fighting each other. They're trying to die on every hill. Irregardless, there was one thing I saw last night. It was a message from friend of the show, Denver Riggleman, who you remember from season 2. He was running for governor, and he dropped out about a week after his episode aired because of family problems. But I want to go ahead and read his message that he posted real fast. Let me go ahead, and I'm pulling it up on my phone. And it's not loading. Here it is. And this is what Denver wrote down. I was in Alexandria today. A colleague and I heard the emergency vehicles responding to the shooting of Representative Steve Scalise, a horrible event. Initially, I didn't know what the sirens meant, but after the fact, I thought of those that serve their constituencies and said a quick prayer for those wounded and their families. Later that day, our Democratic governor made a veracious statement about the need for more gun control in relation to protecting citizens. His statement reminded me of why I ran, why I dislike politicians in general, and why I am a Republican. Many of you here know how I feel about the world of politics, about the regulatory ridiculousness, the incessant taxation, the bureaucratic overreach, and political manipulation / language. I ran because I am exhausted with government interference and the erosion of our most basic principles. I am no fan of political careerists. Because of that, I am liberty-minded. I am a conservative. I believe in freedom. I believe in live and let live. I am a Republican. We have just endured a bitter Republican primary. My observations about the candidates personally. Corey Stewart is one of the hardest working individuals I've ever met. We've had good drinks together because, as he said, I own a distillery, for God's sake. I've broken bread with his staff. I've met his incredible wife, and we've laughed together. I've met Ed Gillespie and his wonderful wife. We drank coffee and talked of the future. He is a gentleman, a good man. Frank Wagner and I spoke of the common bond of the military. We laughed at jokes before the forums, and guess what? I had disagreements with every damn one of them and still do. I've met tremendous people on the trail. Many were politely honest in who they supported when it wasn't me. I know this can get emotional. I lived it. So with that in mind, I've messaged some of the supporters of all the candidates tonight and ask this of every one of you. Support the winner of this primary. Ed and I are not one-minded on the same issues, but Ed and I are of one mind on this. Virginia cannot take 4 years of blue over red. I can't stomach more silly rhetoric, stifling business regulations, ridiculous climate pronouncements, religion shaming, property rights abuse, taxpayer-funded boondoggles, bizarre executive orders. We are not a people that take kindly to government overreach in any facet of our lives. The Whiskey Rebellion was and is about standing for principle, and it was about stopping the ever-encroaching wave of oppression on our basic rights. And by standing together, we can win. My guess is that Corey will run again, and he will want the support of all Republicans. I'm going to skip a little bit here. And my guess is that there are Democrats out there who see their party as losing its compass. And for that, they can come this way. I have to fight. I am a Virginian, born here, raised here, and I live here. I run a business here. I married a Virginia lass, and I'm a UVA grad. I served, I sacrificed, I cringed at the divisions of the party, but I understand them. I agree with many of the criticisms. There are tough, independent-minded individuals in this grand old party, especially here in Virginia. Heck, I am not one to back down. As for Republicans, never mistake kindness for weakness. Again, I appreciate all of you. Let's stand together despite our differences. I would say unite the clans, but that quote has already been used, and he goes off a little bit on there. Folks, the Libertarian Party is already trying to kick out people left and right. We've seen all these attempts at what's going on. The Democratic Party is a lawless party. They're a party that goes against all sense of reality. And I'm a Republican for the same reason John Fremont was a rabid abolitionist. I'm the same reason that Taft went ahead and became Mr. Conservative. I'm a Republican for the same reason that Calvin Coolidge said we need to let the business of America be business. I'm the same Republican that, as Reagan once said, we need to secure liberty for future generations because it's only one generation away from extinction. I'm a Republican for the same reason Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and Mike Lee and Justin Amash and Thomas Massey and Tom Garrett and Walter Jones stand for our Constitution. We have an extreme responsibility, libertarians and conservatives. We cannot, as we take breath on this earth, let the Democrats kill, loot at large, and destroy what we have left. Because ultimately, I'm not willing to die on every hill. But what's one thing you could do? Go ahead and check out the website. We have the t-shirt going on. It helps us fight fake news. It helps us fight the mainstream media. It helps us go on and take the fight straight to the progressives, while at the same time letting them know that liberty is for everyone. At the end of the day, we protect the largest minority on earth, which is the individual. As always, I'm Remso W. Martinez. Tune in tomorrow. Friday. Is it Friday? Yeah, it's Friday. And we'll go ahead and, keep the ball rolling. Take care, folks.